club, you couldn't be more wrong. Don't be surprised when that girl you like ain't who you'd bring home to your mom. You wanna meet the right one, you gotta be the right one. You wanna meet the right one, you gotta be the right one to meet the right one.
Man, so one of my fondest memories, I don't know how many of you guys went to college. How many of you guys went to college or some kind of school after school business? Well, for me, I went to Elam Bible Institute, and they had this phrase that I learned early on, ring by spring. Anybody have a phrase like that where you went to school? There's kind of this promise of ring by spring, or this joke, right, this underlying mantra that people would say, yeah, ring by spring, or money back, guarantee type thing, right? And it was kind of said in jest, but let's be honest, when it comes to Bible school, there's a lot of truth said in jest, right? There's a lot of people who maybe go to Bible school or to a certain place based on the hopes, the ambitions that they will find their significant other, right? And I was no exception. I would never say in front of you publicly that that's why I went to Elam, but I know deep down inside that I'm sure it was a driving force behind that. Is always kind of this ambition to want to get married, right? And I don't know how many of you guys have ever seen, if you have a friend who just is kind of desperate to get married, it's like they'll do anything, kind of do crazy stuff just for this, pursuit, this inner need to get married. Well, Bible school has a lot of people like that, right? It's almost like they came to school just to find this, with the marriage license kind of pre-filled out in their backpack, ready to go and get it done legally in the courthouse when they meet the person. And at Elam, it's rough. They have the saying, ring by spring, but then there's this rule that you're not allowed to have any kind of relationships within your first semester there at school. And wouldn't you know, the guy that I am found a way to get in trouble for being, pursuing a relationship in my first semester there at Elam, and we had to be separated, right? If you can believe that. Here we are, college kids, and they make us where we can't talk to each other, and we have to sit on opposite sides of whatever room that we're in, if we're in the same room together. And they have the RAs who have to there's always one around kind of watching and make sure that we're not doing anything that we're not supposed to. And I'm pretty sure that I was out to get married, as far back as I can remember. Probably 11 or 12. I feel like I've always kind of had this girl in mind who I like and I want to impress, or I want to do nice things for, and it's just kind of been a part of my DNA as far as I can remember. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's gotten me in trouble. A lot of times it's made me desperate, or sometimes not think the way that I should, or be all that clear in my thoughts and actions. But the reality is, I was more this kind of sucker for infatuation than really caring about the other person, about being, loving this person for them, but more so in it for myself. Infatuation is kind of this, they define it as an intense but short-lived passion or admiration for something or someone. And as I look back kind of over the life of the Cliff Note version of my life, if they ever to make one of those books about me, you would probably see this string of kind of short relationship after short relationship based on this infatuation after infatuation. And I wish, with everything in me that, these tragedies could be blamed on our youth, or, it's just not being able to think clearly. But the reality is, even as a college student and as a young adult, I still struggled with this infatuation mindset where I was more in it for myself than for the other person. So today we're going to start a new series called Love Song, and it's going to be about relationships, about sex, about whenever being in youth ministry, these were always the best attended series, because you start talking about a series about sex and relationships, and it seems like students start coming from every sorts of local place and college and high school in the area, right? Because this topic is not something that gets talked about too often, but they would love to come and hear about it. Now, this is kind of my first time really diving into this topic and series, talking to adults, right? Talking as an adult to students is one thing, it's a little easier, but here, you are as some of my peers and older than me even. So there may be a chance where I might blush during the course of the series, or you may blush, or as a result of you may blushing, I may be blushing, right? So there's different things to be just warning you from the get-go here. And I can only imagine when Steve comes up to speak what kind of side marks he's going to say that are going to make us blush. So just prepared to have a lot of fun and a good spirit here over the course of the next 5 weeks. So we're going to go on this journey together because there are not too many other things that are more important or that we have in common than this idea of relationships and dating and marriage and sex, and not necessarily in that order. But we're going to be looking through the book of the Song of Solomon here over the next 5 weeks, and it's kind of the scandalous book of the Bible. There's a lot of things going on there that you probably never read in Sunday school growing up as a kid, because it was kind of the R-rated, if not X-rated book of the Bible. So we're going to be diving into that, just some kind of background about this book. If you're following along in your notes through the YouVersion app, or if you have a Bible in front of you, you can turn to there. This book was written around 965 BC, and it can kind of go a couple different ways. Some people feel, it was written as an allegory, right, where it's kind of a representation of God's love for the people of Israel, or if this is a story of Jesus' love for the church, right? And this is kind of a modern or a prequel to, any kind of allegory that you can think of that you've ever read, where everything kind of has a different meaning or a double meaning than what you're reading. And then there's kind of the other side of the coin where it's a love story, right? It's a love story that was written about these different people who were in love with each other. And the story kind of takes us all over the place over the next 5 weeks. So I encourage you to make sure you make a commitment to join us and maybe bring somebody with you who might need to be a part of this conversation. But today it kind of starts with this idea of attraction. Any good relationship, right, always starts with some kind of attraction that starts to form between two people, be it love or be it infatuation. There's this attraction that brings one person close to another. And we want to kind of think through, what are the qualities that you want to be attracted to for someone who could be your future spouse, right? What are the things that you're going to be looking for? What are going to be the things that you're drawn to, or that people are drawn to you for? And today's culture kind of has it so much different than just even a generation ago, right? With cell phones and texting and the internet, things are going down a much different path in the way relationships are cultivated and formed than even just a generation ago, right? And one of those things tools that are out there is online dating, right? And obviously, if we think of online dating, usually the first thing we think of is desperate or crazy who would do that thing. But there's really a lot of people who have found success in online dating. And in case that might be something you're ever thinking about, I thought we would share some quick precautions on things to stay away from if you ever find yourself seeing these in an online dating forum, right? This is, I don't know his name, but this is his profile. You probably can't read it down at the bottom, but I'll read it for you. He says, my self-summary is, my life is about goals, right? Well, that starts off pretty good. He says, here are my 4 current goals. Goal number 1 is to hold a massive python, boa, or anaconda. All right, so I guess if you're not into reptiles, you probably are clicking next or swiping right or however that goes. Number 2 is to be eaten by a python, boa, or anaconda. So if you're in it for the insurance money, then this may be a place you want to go to. Number 3 is to have insects on my naked body. All right, I don't know. Or number 4 is to be beaten up. Okay, so not too high aspirations for this guy, unless maybe you like beating up on people, then this might be the perfect relationship for you. Here's another kind of person to stay away from. This is I won't murder you. Okay, so if that doesn't cause you to swipe right, maybe his self-summary will. He says, I'm a fun-loving guy and a self-starter who has absolutely no interest in committing murder. All right? I'm looking for love, companionship, or just that one lovely evening, and rest assured that the one lovely evening will absolutely end with you back at your house, safe and sound. And let me take you into my magical world of not murdering anyone ever for any reason. And then he says, under what I'm doing with my life, he says, I'll tell you this right up front, certainly not murdering anyone. Least of all you. Beyond that, mostly digging. All right, so mostly digging, yes. Stay away from this guy. You may want to stay away from Patriot Pony 1986, all right? Patriot Pony 1986, his self-summary says, I'm a proud conservative American and brony. All right, how many of you guys know what brony is? Anybody know what a brony is? Yeah, some of the younger people. And Mike Carter? Yeah, I figured that would be how it goes. All right, brony is a male My Little Pony fan. All right, so I don't know if we have any bronies in the audience, but that's what it is, all right? He says, I work very hard to enmesh the philosophy of Ayn Rand with the framework of tolerance and love espoused by Pink Pie and Friends. I have no idea what that means. I'm something of an intellectual and would love to discuss politics or cartoons with some pony near me. See what he did there? Some pony. Did you catch that? Some pony near me in the future. Please understand that if we were to meet, I am the man in the relationship. All right? Obviously, I don't know why I would ever have doubted that. What I'm doing with my life, I'm trying to finish the first draft of my ebook entitled Serfdom in Equestria, an expose on the liberal agenda slowly eroding freedom in My Little Pony universe. I'm really good at fashion. That's what he says. Really good at fashion. And then last but not least, for the men, you're going to want to stay away from Rose Face Killa, all right? Her self-summary is, she says, I'm not down to earth at all. Swipe right. All right, right there. If you don't reply to my text, I will turn up to your house drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning, crying and trying to break in. I hate drinking tea and doing craft. I hate bicycles and beach, sunshine and parks, and cider. I hate cider. So hopefully that will guide you guys. You see what to stay away from when you're in your online dating pursuit there, right? And now that you've gone through Online Dating 101, I expect to be doing exponentially more weddings next year than we did this last year, okay? Now that you got the tools of the trade there. But today we want to take a look at some qualities that we should be building within ourselves and that can attract us to the right kind of person. These come right out of chapters 1 and 2 of Song of Songs, and they're qualities to develop and to look for in a potential spouse. And the first one may be the most important one that we are going to be looking for, and this is this idea of godly character. If you're taking notes, qualities to develop and look for is godly character. Listen to what the woman of the story has to say about the man. He says this in verse 2. He says, she says this, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. And here's the key. She says, your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the young women love you. All right, she focuses on this idea of your name. This man has this name, this reputation, this character amongst all the people. In those days, perfume would have been this kind of very rare and expensive, purified oil, right? And equally as rare, if not more so, was the opportunity to take baths in this culture. So a lot of times people, probably had their stank on, okay? And this perfume would have gone a long way to cover up some of that stank, right? And the character and reputation are two different things. Character, is this idea of who you really are. A reputation is just, kind of what others think of you. And she says that your name, your character, who you are is like perfume poured out. No wonder everyone is all into you, right? No wonder all the girls like you. It wasn't because, he's singing romantic ballads or because he looks good with his shirt off. Man, check out the bod, all the girls, right? It's not like he was the Zac Efron of his day. No, it was about his character. It's about the way he presented himself and he lived his life. And the very first thing that should attract us in relationships is this idea of godly character. If you want a godly marriage someday, then you have to start living a godly life today. And it starts with this idea of godly character. Now, you may think that maybe you're the exception to the rule because somehow you're always finding yourself with the wrong person, right? Man, I'm always finding myself with the wrong guy. They're always after this one thing, and I can never find myself out of this kind of cycle. And under normal circumstances and with, maybe normal people, that makes sense. But it doesn't really work that way for me, you may think. And here's my response to that, right? If you don't like the kind of fish that you're catching, then maybe you need to start looking at the bait that you're using. All right, now if you want to pull out your phones and maybe tweet that or something, maybe tag somebody needs to hear that, right? If you don't like the kind of fish that you're catching, then maybe you need to take a look at the bait that you're using. Like tends to attract like. And I promise you, if Jesus is first in every way of your life, right? If you put him first and choose, God, what's going to honor you in every decision, then it's going to impact the way that you carry yourself. And in that, it's going to impact the way that you dress. It's going to impact the places that you go and the people that you hang with. And when godly character begins to reign in your life, then ungodly people are not going to want to have anything to do with you. You're going to find this natural bug repellent to these ungodly people who just want maybe this one thing. And I remember this shift that kind of took place in my own life where I began to realize, man, maybe marriage is less about me finding the right person and maybe more about becoming the right person. Right, when, in Elam, I remember hearing early on, right, we always have this idea that we're like half an Oreo, right? How many of you guys like Oreos? You have your different ways, right? You twist them and maybe you lick, or you twist and maybe bite it, or you put it together, or maybe just dunk it and eat the whole thing, right? There's all sorts of ways to eat an Oreo, but there was this idea that a lot of times we act as if we're just half an Oreo. And our life isn't complete. We're not going to be whole unless we find our other half of our Oreo. And for me, that can characterize the majority of my life where I was in this desperation, this infatuation to just find what was going to complete me on the inside. And the reality is, true love and marriage and relationship is less about finding the right person and more about becoming the right person. You become godly and then you will attract godly. One of my heroes in the faith, Andy Stanley, he says it this way: become the person that you are looking for is looking for. Right? Think about the person that you are looking for, and you want to become the person that you are looking for is looking for. Above all else, seeking his kingdom first and his righteousness, right? It starts with godly character. And it's not seeking a spouse or it's not seeking marriage, but it's seeking his kingdom first and his righteousness. Seeking first Jesus and everything, and all the other things will take care of themselves. But it starts with godly character, your name. The next quality that we see kind of develop in this attraction, this pursuing, this idea of growing trust. Right? There's this growing trust that begins to form here in this relationship. Here we have this couple, and they're getting to know each other, and they start to see these insecurities begin to bubble up to the top, right? And what we see is how they begin to love each other through those insecurities into this growing trust. And here's what the woman, again, what she says. She says, "Dark am I, yet lovely daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon," right? Now, in our culture, that doesn't really mean a whole lot. What is she saying here? She's saying my skin is really dark, right? In our culture, we would think, wow, that's kind of attractive, right? We think of dark skin being more beautiful, right? That's why much money is spent in the tanning industry, right? There's some kind of like $5 billion industry we have here in America where people will go and pay money to sit in this kind of tube thing that eats you and fries your skin and spits you out as like a pair of leather boots or something, right? In our culture, that's what we consider beautiful. But in their culture, it was the opposite, right? In their culture, beauty was seen more in skin that was light and fair. And she's saying, man, I got dark skin. Despite all the things that you may be thinking, this is the way that I look, and I don't really, when I see myself in the mirror, reflections in the water, I see this dark skinned, and why would anybody choose to like me or value me? And this meant, this idea of being in dark skin was she was always out in the fields working, constantly in the sun, and the sun was burning her up, and this is her lifestyle. She doesn't have the freedom to just be in a throne room all day and to just, be bathing all day in beauty oils and whatnot. She's working hard and this is her life as a servant, as a hard worker, dark skin. And she says, do not stare at me because I am dark. Because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect. Right? She's revealing her insecurities to him. And what this man begins to do in this story is just to love her insecurities away. And when you become attracted to someone and the relationship is advancing, you're going to want to open up to them. It's natural. Are we growing in trust with one another, right? And almost always people are bringing up their insecurities, right? It starts with physical and then kind of starts to morph into these, emotional and deeper insecurities that we have. There's always something about the way we look and the way that we see ourselves that we don't like, right? We could probably have a microphone up here and everyone could get up and share something about themselves if they could, find the willpower to overcome their insecurity and share about this thing that they don't like about themselves. It could be some, maybe spare tires you have in the love handle region, or maybe it's a nose that points in the wrong direction as a result of some kind of childhood accident, right? Whatever the story may be, right? For me, it was always I've always been kind of short and chubby, right? In 6th grade, I was the tallest kid around, and I never grew again since 6th grade. I kind of just got stunted there, hit the growth early and fast, but I'm in luck, right? And you guys know who this is? This is Danny DeVito, right? Danny DeVito is my wife's man crush, okay? Like, I got it going on for myself. As long as I look like Danny DeVito, or at least a little bit better, I was able to score with Chazlet here, And remember, this is the guy who they also had play the Penguin, okay? So as long as I can be better looking than him, then, I got it made here. I was able to survive, right? But for my wife, I know when I'm not loving her well because her insecurities start taking over the way that she thinks and living in her mind, right? I like to push back and tell her what's maybe wrong, but deep down I start to hear, man, I'm just not loving her well. I'm not loving her well in a way that her insecurities begin to flee in the presence of love. Right, godly character, and then a growing trust, right? A growing trust where she feels secure and safe, and all of those things aren't going to matter. And if you start to feel worse after someone reveals their insecurities, right, then that's not a good sign, right? It might not be the place that you want to be in. And if you're loving them, through, and there's an increasing trust, and you're moving in the right direction. Godly character, growing trust. The next quality that we see in here in the story that stands out is this idea of higher standards. Qualities to develop and to look for is higher standards. She says this as the story continues. She says, tell me, you whom I love, where you graze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday, why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends? Right? And what she's saying here is, in that culture, veiled women were kind of known as the women of ill repute, we'll say it, right? Like the women who were willing to show you some companionship for the right price, okay? And she says she's not going to be like that. She says if that's what it's going to take, or if that's the kind of person that I'm going to have to be, then here's who I said who I'm going to be, and I'm not going to do that. That is beyond who God has called me to be. There may be other people who will let you do certain things or act in certain ways, treat you in certain ways, but I'm not going there. Not even if it's to gain someone's attention who I really care about. And she has these higher standards, these different standards. And I realize in our culture, it can seem kind of old-fashioned, right? It can kind of be, we use maybe the word prude, or to talk about things in this way where we have these higher standards. But we believe, right, and I believe with all of my heart that part of finding our purpose is finding how God created us to engage in relationships and attraction with each other. And when it comes to sexual relationships between a man and a woman, God has made it very clear that he's established these boundaries, right? And there's some things that are just reserved for marriage. And everyone else kind of seems to be throwing those boundaries out the window out there, and sooner, it's happening sooner and sooner, and earlier in life. And we have a choice to make when we're with this other person. Is it going to be a relationship that is going to honor God together? Are we going to choose to honor God together in this relationship? You know what? God has these standards, right? People are going to make fun of us, and we're going to feel maybe different, but we're going to choose to honor God in this relationship. Or, we're going to say, we're just going to choose to sin together, right? We're going to choose to disobey what God has laid out for us, this purpose, right? His blessing falls in this certain way, but we're going to choose to live this different way. And the reason that this is important is because, when you're building a foundation in which your marriage is going to stand, if you choose to sin early on, then you just have to realize that the people involved there are compromisers, right? You and this other person are compromising your faith and the standards that you believe in. And later on, you're going to begin to wonder, he's going to begin to wonder, man, I wonder if he's compromising his standards or faith with someone else when the insecurities begin to set in. Man, if he was so easily and readily available to do it then what is keeping him from just doing that now behind my back? And if you want what everyone else has, then you do what everyone else does. But if you want something better, and if you want something that others are not willing, that others don't have, then you got to be willing to do things that others aren't willing to do. And that's submit their lives to this higher standard that God has laid out for us. And there's a pretty real chance that given our current culture, higher standards are maybe the farthest thing from your mind. Maybe you got around more as a young person more than, the public transportation system does, right? Or maybe you don't get around, but you're still falling short when it comes to the standard that God has set. And things maybe start to feel maybe a little awkward or a little uncomfortable. And the heat's getting turned up. But the beautiful thing about God and his grace and forgiveness is that it's never too late to start right now, to start to honor him, to put him first. Right? Maybe you need to take some time as a couple, if you're in a relationship or you're married, to just ask forgiveness together. And so this is a way that we used to treat our relationship in the past, but this is who we want to build on going forward. And we just need to, God, before you together, we're sorry for this poor foundation that we laid. We want to start over and lay a fresh, new foundation. And God will meet you in that moment, in that spot, and it's like new. I know I have sent letters to different girls or Facebook messages, right, to people who in the past who I've really, looking back, I just treated so flippantly. Their hearts and their emotions, the things that they valued, right? I could, looking back on, it looks like I could care less about them and just was concerned about how I felt in my infatuation. I was just in it to get what I want. And you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I did that to you. I'm sorry that I may have impacted your future relationships with your current husband, or I'm sorry. And maybe it's some kind of, DTR, to define the relationship that you have with your significant other or your spouse, where we need to talk about who it is that we want to be and what steps do we need to take in order to get there. If we want to be a couple that's going to have godly character and have this growing trust, then how do we get there? What changes do we need to make in our relationship? And those steps couldn't mean that you need to maybe take a couple steps back for a time. But whatever your story says, you don't have to let the past hold you back or weigh you down or keep you living in shame. But we need a new course, a new direction for the future, and choosing to raise the standards of how we interact with each other. We want to build a relationship based on honoring God together, right? Godly character, growing trust, higher standards, and lastly, we see this idea of just constant encouragement. In this relationship, there's just this constant encouragement that we see continue on. He says, I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses. All right, guys, I encourage you tonight, as you're trying to get your groove on, to say, I liken you, my darling, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariot horses, and see how that goes over for you, right? But remember, this, it's a different culture, and she's already insecure about her appearance, right? But in this culture, what he's saying is, in those days, Pharaoh had these beautiful white horses, right? Then in some cultures and even situations, they were seen as deities, right? As Pharaoh was, the sun god and deity, then his horses that carried him along with it, these white, beautiful stallions. And that's the picture that he's creating here for her, right? You see yourself as this dark, unbeautiful creature, and I see you as this white, beautiful creature. You see yourself as a burnt piece of, leather luggage, but I see you as this white, fair. I see you as the most valuable and cherished possession in the kingdom. You're not just half an Oreo. And it goes on, how beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful your eyes are doves, how handsome. She replies, how handsome you are, my beloved. Right now they're talking about physical looks, right? We're kind of caught up in this, they're swooning over each other, but this is way down the line, right? This is after they've already established godly character and trusts. Only after all these other things do they begin to focus on, physical attraction is a part of the game. And here we are several verses into the story, and they're talking about these physical attributes that they admire and they like, and they're caught up, right? Guys, this should be heavenly news to you, okay? Because the reality is, if you have fallen from the ugly tree, all right, and you've hit every branch on the way down, it doesn't matter, right? As long as you have godly character, there's hope for you, all right? Yes, there's hope for us. See? Somehow there's still hope for us, right? But when you lay down your life to love her and to serve her and to cherish her, right, you get better looking to her somehow. It's like this magical, some kind of voodoo that happens, right? And now that Chaz and I are married, and, sometimes, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I forget to do that. Sometimes I forget to cherish her, to guard her heart, right? And I used to do all sorts of things when we were dating and engaged, right? All sorts of these little mushy things where I would, wake up before the sun came up, and I would put her favorite coffee on top of her car, so when she left for work, her coffee would be there, and, right, all these little things that we do when we're trying to win a prize, right? And sometimes I forget to still pursue her like that. Right? She saw me, and she saw the way that I poured out my life in ministry and for other people. And she was just telling me this morning as I'm putting on the shirt that I'm wearing underneath that, and she says, when I saw that shirt and I looked up what it was about, I just started to cry, because I realized the things in your heart were echoed to some of the things that were in my heart, right? And somehow I began to get better looking to her, right? And somehow, right, I stormed the castle, and the voodoo worked in my favor, and I scored way out of my league. And watch now how she responds to his love. The first thing that we see is that she feels special, right? She says, I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. There's just this singular, right? She's talking about there's this one beautiful thing in this entire land. She is that beautiful thing. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. Like a lily among thorns is my darling. As he begins to respond and say, yes, that's exactly who you are. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among the young women. Of all the others, this is who you are, right? She begins to feel special. In chapter 1, it was all about her feeling insecure, and these insecurities were taking over. And in chapter 2, she just begins to be free as she begins to feel special, because he loved her through her insecurities, right? He adored her, he cherished her, he valued her. And then the second thing that we see she begins to feel is this idea of feeling secure. Right, men, one of the greatest things that we can give to our brides is to give her the gift of security. Right, this is what she says. She says, like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my beloved among the men. I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. You hear just the security she has, just the freedom, just to be able to, normally she's living this life where she's working in the field and her skin is burnt, and now she just has this freedom to just rest and be in his shade. There's not a care in the world. And we help the women in our lives feel secure in our shade by doing these three things, right? We're a pastor, we're their provider, and we're their protector, right? You don't need an ordination or a certificate to be a pastor, right? As their pastor, you set the spiritual tone, men. We set the spiritual tone in our families and in our relationship. We initiate the walk together where we pray and we talk about life and to hear her heart about what is concerning her, right? We are the first to say, let's pray over the family and these issues that are going on. You bring your family to church. All right, a stay-at-home family does not raise go-to-church kids, okay? You be the pastor of your family, and you bring your family, lead them where they need to be. You can't take anyone where you haven't been yourself, right? So if you got to start to get your desire for God on, and that's priority number one. You set the standard, though. You be the pastor, and then second, you be the provider. You are the provider. Now, it doesn't mean that you make more money than she does, all right? Because in our relationship, my wife makes way more money than I do. But you set the tone for where the finances go about living beneath your means, right? So you're not struggling in this paycheck to paycheck mentality, right? You live below your means so that there's not this pressure. And you talk about finances and where you stand, and we're gonna spend a little less money on maybe these things that are gonna collect dust and die, and we're gonna save more for these meaningful experiences that we'll never forget as a family. We're gonna be a team working together in this area, and you be the initiator for that and the provider for that. And lastly, you're her protector. Now, hopefully, you are bigger than her, or else she's gonna be beating you up. And in our relationship, I think, make the case. Thankfully, she's a little smaller than me. But we are called, men, to lay down our life for our spouse, just like Jesus did for his church. And not just physically, right? It can be easy to kind of work up the courage or the nerve to one time jump in front of the bullet. But it takes a real man of God to be able to, on a day in and day out, lay down your life for your spouse emotionally, right? To guard her heart daily, to put her first. Right? I will love you with the purity of my mind. With me, you're always going to be safe. We're her pastor, we're her provider, we're her protector. And she goes on, she says, strengthen me with raisins, right? Now, what does that mean? Does that mean get your 2 scoops on, right? Raisin bran. And in this culture, again, raisins were seen as this kind of aphrodisiac, all right? So you can kind of see what's going on here. Strengthen me with raisins. Refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. And she says, his left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me, okay? Men, this is a good place to be in, all right? You want to be in this place where you got her held close and tight, and she's enjoying it. And we're going to lay down our lives to love our wives and guard their hearts. And she will give herself to him because he has given himself for her. And we want what, not really a whole lot of people in our culture want anymore. But to get it, we're going to have to do things differently than what everyone else is doing in our culture and in our relationships. And then our marriages will be a reflection of a God who loves us and has a purpose for us and begins to shine a light in a culture that doesn't value those things, but desires it, needs it, is desperate for it. This is a message that is for the single, it's for the looking for a partner, it's for the married. All of us hopefully can find ourselves in the story of who God is calling us to be in our relationships. So as we close here this morning, I'm just going to ask you just to bow your heads and close your eyes. And for all of us, the most important thing right from the beginning was this idea of godly character. It doesn't even have to be in a relationship, maybe in your life. For all of us, we just need to say, you know what, I want to pursue more in my life godly character. I don't know where you came from this morning or where you were at last night or the things that were going on, but for all of us, we need to pursue godly character. And maybe you are here this morning and you are desperate in wanting a relationship. But if for a second we can all just put that aside to say, you know what, we want to be a people who pursue godly character. Right, so that we can focus on becoming the right person and not caught up in the search to constantly be looking for the right person. And as we pursue godly character, God, you're going to be weaving the story. We get caught up in, and before we know it, we're right in the midst of where you want us to be. So if you're here this morning and you along with me, I'm right here with you guys. If you with me would just say, God, I want to pursue this morning, just make a commitment to him to pursue more godly character, right? Not to say that we're bad or that we're terrible, but just in the midst of your presence here, God, this morning, I want to pursue more godly character in my life of singleness, in my life in this relationship, in my life in my family. I want to pursue more godly character. Just between you and God, no one looking around, but if you would join me this morning, if that's your heart, just to raise your hand before God. God, you see every single person who are here this morning desires and longs for more godly character. No longer to be swept away by what was good enough for yesterday, the anointing that was sufficient yesterday, but today we want to pursue you with more intent, to long for more godly character, so we may live fresh in your anointing for today, for this moment as we live, for the people that we're going to meet and to encounter. God, we long, this morning we're desperate for more godly character in our lives. God, would you use us starting today in the relationships we have, but first in our hearts, do a deep, deep work so that we don't even have to be afraid in this culture that is so flippant with sex that it causes us to blush, God, but that we can be so confident and secure in who you've called us to be and the boundaries and the guidelines and the blessings that you've established, that we can lead the talk, we can lead the charge, and how we're going to change how we interact and pursue. But God, first work in our hearts to be the right person. God, for all the insecurities that are here in this room, in this place, God, I pray that we would just be able to offer them before you at your altar here this morning. God, that we are not half an Oreo. God, that any thoughts or beliefs or passions that are driving people to search for what's going to hopefully complete them, God, that they would your love would cast out all the insecurities. And God, this morning, those wounds and those hurts that were made through sometimes no fault of our own, but there, God, that you would bring healing into. And God, in our relationship with you, we can find ourselves free and resting in your shade, knowing that you are going to provide for us, that you love us even more than we love us. And if we can just let go and let you, that you're going to lead us and you're going to guide us as we're pursuing you. And God, may we just be a picture that is being painted here together, that the world begins to see and wonder what's different. Why is there peace amidst the storm? Why is there confidence and assurance amidst all the craziness? And they're going to come and they're going to taste and they're going to see that, God, you are good. And then they're going to find their purpose. So, God, we love you. We commit these things this morning. We commit the next 4 weeks to you, that you would just begin to continue to wreck us. To wreck us, God, we love you. We love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, amen, guys. May you go from here and just pursue godliness and feel and know that You can rest in his shade, and he will provide for you. We love you. Make sure to give a hug or 2 or 3 out there. And let's be the change. Love you guys. Have a great week.